Round number 6 of the Porsche Esports Carrera Cup. Great Britain heads to Donington National as we delve in towards the second half of what has been an amazing season so far. My name is Connery Maddock, and this time I'll be joined by Arjuna Kankapati on the commentary for this one. And it's all shaping up to be a fantastic flourish to the end of the season. The championship is still wide open, and I cannot wait to see yet more battling going on out there on circuit. And Arjuna, this series has had a lot of excitement throughout. It seems like the end of every single race there's something to talk about, and I think that's going to keep on happening until we get a champion.
Absolutely. This is a great series. And you know, I said this when I was last at Donington Park, last time with Paul Smith, who I'm filling in for today, slightly under the weather. Hopefully he gets better very, very soon. But it's a really interesting championship. You've got the likes of Sebastian Job here, Connery, a world champion, now trying to become a national champion. We usually do this the other way around in the real world, but it's great that we're getting this influx of national racing championships onto the iRacing service, and 1 point separating our championship fight. Donington Park going to be a very interesting race today.
Yeah, it's going to be a stark difference compared to where we were last time in this series. Of course, we had our special event round across the channel at Le Mans, and, well, Kevin Ellis Jr. gained a whole boatload of points during that one, and Sebastian Job fell by the wayside, so that means that Kevin Ellis Jr. only leads by 1 point coming into the final 3 rounds of the season. And, well, with the margins that close, then we're set up for not just a grandstand finish to any of these races, but a grandstand finish to the entire season as well. Next up, we've got Silverstone International, which is a circuit, or a rather circuit layout that I haven't experienced much before, so it's going to be interesting to see the drivers be able to cope with that. And then we have the grand finale at the start of March, Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. And, well, if you want a finale to a British series, I think it's probably the best place to go, right?
Definitely. Not just for a British series. I'm an IndyCar fan, Connor. You know, know that. I like to go racing there as well. But what a championship. What a way to finish it off. Silverstone and Brands Hatch. And let's take a look at our championship standings right now as well. As mentioned, just 1 point separating the top two. Kevin Ellis Jr., what a 2021 it's been for him, Connery. He leads your Porsche Esports Super Cup champion, Sebastian Job, by just 1 point.
Of course, he crossed the line in second place at the second race of, or rather, the Le Mans race. I'm still got it on my mind it was 2 races, but no, it was a big 45-minute event. He crossed line second, but due to a post-race review, Graham Carroll was stripped of his race win via a 10-second time penalty due to an incident coming into Arnage on the final lap, where he basically cleared out Jamie Fluke coming through that particular corner. So penalty applied there for Graham Carroll. Of course, Sebastian Job also fell back in that particular incident. Kevin Ellis Jr., as a result, basically picked up all the pieces, got all the points, and now he's ahead in the championship, but like I said, by 1 single point.
And how exciting is it, Connery? I mean, couple of races left to go, couple more opportunities, and Kevin Ellis Jr., who's really kicked off this year in the best way possible, sets himself up to become a champion. Let's take a look, though, at this track, Connery, because we're using an alternate layout to the version that we first used when we came here a couple of weeks ago.
Yep, we are. So we're using the shortened layout because we used the full Grand Prix circuit earlier on in the season, but this time we completely skip that final sector. We just go straight through the chicane through Goddard's and then to the start-finish line. But everything else is as it was earlier on in the season. And, of course, if we remember back to the early parts of the season, we remember we still, quite characteristically in this series, had an absolutely amazing finish. I think you were there for that one, actually, Arjuna, so you're getting a little bit of deja vu for this one at the moment. But hopefully we'll get to see that again.
Yeah, and there was, some interesting moments through the chicane that leads on to the part of the circuit that we're not going to be using this time. But now the final corner, very high speed, and a very difficult passing opportunity. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how it shakes out.
Yep, it's going to be incredibly enthralling, I think, because at this point, it's a little bit different compared to where we were. the season is currently in a situation that's different compared to where we were when this track was previously on the schedule. You know, we were very early doors at that stage. You know, the championship picture wasn't exactly very clear. What's clear to me right now, at least, with the standings the way they are, of course, Kevin Ellis Jr., Sebastian Job as close as ever, 199 versus 198. Graham Carroll still technically within the mathematical shot of the championship, but he needs a lot of things going his way. So it's basically a head-to-head between those two guys at the moment, Sebastian Job, Kevin Ellis Jr., and they went wheel-to-wheel last time. So, I mean, I don't think we could really hype this one up enough. The story writes itself, right?
And I mean, Kevin had a pretty fantastic race yesterday in that Porsche Esports Super Cup. Let's see what he can do today. Not such a great run for Job as far as I understand it. I was a bit busy on some other broadcasting duties, so I know you got to watch that action. But here at this kind of a circuit, Connery, qualifying is going to be very important. Yes, we're going to have that invert grid at some point, but you need to get as far up the grid as you can, because we have seen that you can fall away from the pack here at Donington Park.
Yep, you really can, and of course it's not the easiest track to get those overtakes done either, so if you do have a mishap, you tend to get freight trained, and then you're trying to find a line to file back in on, but obviously no one will let you through because they think it's a position for the taking, so it's a very difficult track in that aspect. Of course, it was similar with Snedston, I believe, with Jamie Fluke. Let's hope we don't remind him too much of that, as he got caught offline and then lost like 5 spots because he couldn't find a way back into the single file train. But, yeah, I'm super excited for this one. We've got qualifying underway at the moment. There's about 14 minutes left in that one. Of course, we return to the heat racing format here for this round and, of course, the rest of the season. That means that qualifying, well, you don't quite have as much time as you expect. Usually in qualifying, you'll be able to complete your last lap if you're able to get onto one. But with this heat racing format, that means actually qualifying is shortened so that once the clock expires, that's it. And you won't be able to complete your lap. And that's caught a few people out already. Yeah,
and I'm watching right now. A few of these teammates are working together right now, Connor. Getting together, getting in the draft, trying to build up momentum. Let's watch out for lap times here, and let's see if some of these teams are able to work together in qualifying.
Before we actually get to qualifying, though, here's a reminder of the format for these race days. Of course, we've had an hour of warm-up there for the drivers to get used to how the track is behaving at the moment. Of course, there is dynamic weather in this one, so you need to get accustomed to the track temperature and any other weather conditions. You have to qualifying 20 minutes, open qualifying, everyone out there for themselves. And with a track as short as this, sometimes that can be a little bit congested. Race 1 will be 25 minutes. We'll have the little 10-minute warm-up in between both of the races for drivers to catch their breath. And then for race 2, it's another 25-minute race, but the top 6 grid spots are reversed based on the results of race number 1. So that's how things stand here coming into this one. We had, of course, a special event where things were a little bit different, but back to regularly scheduled programming in this one. And well, qualifying still underway. I'm seeing some of the provisional times come through at the moment. Still, there's plenty of time and plenty of laps out there left to go. Remember, these lap times are incredibly short. So they are doing sort of low 1-minute 6s at the very top of the standings right now. So you're going to get ample opportunity to put those laps in.
And we ride on board then with your leader in the championship, Kevin Ellis Jr., right behind his teammates right now. And this is that draft I was talking about, Connery. Down the hill into the old hairpin. You might not think that draft is going to be such a big factor here, but when the lap time is so short, when you spend so much time on the throttle, that draft is going to be so crucial, and Kevin Ellis works his way the second sector right now.
Yeah, we saw a very similar thing at Le Mans with the Apex Racing team guys, especially working in their 3-car pack, and they were able to use that to great effect at Le Mans. Of course, it's less of an effect here at Donington, but it's still quite a heavy slipstream circuit, especially on the run here out of Coppice and then down into the final chicane. You can get a lot of speed down here, but of course it requires a lot of coordination between everyone here to make sure that they don't trip over each other with the runs they get down into corners. But they were all aboard this lap and all head their way down on towards pit lane. But yeah, at the moment, they're not really able to make much of an impact there, at least in the top 3 spots. Sebastian Job and Graham Carroll, the 2 Red Bull Racing Esports teammates, currently hold those top 2 spots. And then Isaac Price in third place there. There he is out there on circuit in that bright orange Porsche. Well, not really having help from anyone at the moment, but he's able to get up into P3 for now, ahead of all the Apex cars.
And you know, on his return to an iRacing championship, for Isaac Price, not a bad season so far, Connery. 5th place in the standings. It's been up and down, maybe slightly struggled at the start in the first couple of rounds, but the pace has built up, the performances have built up as well. What's the lap time going to be as he crosses the line one more time?
So here we go. It's a 106.602, which is about half a second off of his best lap. So maybe just another little outlap to try and get himself sorted there. He's getting a little bit of slipstream off of Simeon Lynch further down the roads. Of course, the draft is quite powerful in these 911 GT3 Cup cars, so he is going to be feeling an effect from that far back, but maybe not as much as, of course, the Apex guys in their double toe that they've been trying to work around the circuit. Of course, Sebastian Job and Graham Carroll trying to orchestrate things together at the very top of the order as well. 9.5 minutes left to go. You can basically get 9 laps in that time, of course not including having to come down in pit lane for fresh tyres.
Yeah, and we've already seen a couple of teams doing that, both Sebastian Job and Kevin Ellis Jr. getting a fresh set of rubber. It seems like, obviously, it's both that combination of Connery of not wanting to overheat the tires and also tire wear. This new tire model takes a lot to try and work up that tire temperature, and I think we're seeing, about halfway through these qualifying sessions, cars coming down, getting a fresh set of rubber, and heading back out onto track. We'll now see if they can work that speed up once again. Sebastian Job, Graham Carroll right now working together down into the old hairpin. Very curious to see what those two teammates can be doing.
Whoa, someone's looped it. Simeon Lynch loops it in the background, and that's a bit embarrassing. Out into the grass before the turn 2 of Hollywood there. So that's unfortunate there for Simeon Lynch. Hasn't really had the best of times in this series, I don't think. But with a respectable qualifying time right now in P8, maybe it won't make too much of an impact, that spin there. I'm seeing another person around as well. That was Matthew Dorrington that I saw flash up on my screen very, very briefly here. It's a very tricky circuit when it comes to track limits, isn't it? Because you don't really have any runoff. It's either curb or grass.
I think Ryan Parkins as well got caught off by that lack of runoff as well. So watch out for that in our races as well, Connery. With all of this hard wheel-to-wheel fighting that we have, maybe just a slight hip check forces a car off into the grass. And yesterday I was at VIR and I saw a couple of unsavory incidents taking place where cars sailed their way through the grass, making contact with unsuspecting competitors. Let's see if we can avoid that today. It looks like Craig Williams has just gone off in the background as well.
Yeah, so a lot of drivers actually having a bit of trouble here in qualifying, trying to find the very edge of the track limits. Of course, you do have to push it to the edge in a series like this. You know, every single half a tenth of a second matters. Well, it's only a tenth of a second between P1 and P2 at the moment, and even slimmer margin between P2 and P3. So all that little extra time you can gain really does matter. Those are the two Red Bull Racing Esports cars of Job and Carroll working in their draft pack right now. That's Sebastian Job getting released into the final chicane. What sort of lap time is he going to be able to set? It's a 106 flat to beat. In terms of his own lap time, it's a 106.152 that last time around. So about a tenth of a second slower than his fastest lap. And, well, you have to remind everyone here, this is still a short circuit, and that might even have a slight effect with all the cars running over it in terms of just heating up the track at just marginally by a degree, if that. And that will also affect the qualifying time. So we don't usually see it as much of an effect here on road racing, but on short circuits like this, it's a thing.
Yeah, and when your lap time deltas are that much smaller and every minute difference gets amplified that much more. Very valid point that you make there, Connery. As more cars head out onto track, rubber up the track, heat the track surface up a little bit more, does get a little bit tougher to hang that car around the corner. Now, though, Graham Carroll gets that toe from his teammate down this back straightaway into the final corner. Is Job going to do the same thing and pull to the side? No, he does not. What's the lap time going to be from his teammate then?
Let's see from Graham Carroll. Is he able to surpass his teammate? Across the line he goes. It is a 106.082, so not quite enough there for Graham Carroll. It's 28 thousandths of a second behind his teammates. That is about as close to no cigar as you can get.
a quarter of a tenth of a second. The margins there must be meters, if not centimeters, between them. Still waiting, though, Connery, for Apex Racing Team. Where is Kevin Ellis Jr. going to find almost 1.5 tenths to go and match the Red Bull teammates out front? Ellis is the highest of the Apex teammates, and he is in 4th.
Yeah, it's a big ask. Yeah, but he has all the advantages in his pocket, doesn't he? He's basically the only driver out there that has the benefit of organized double toe. So you would have thought that he would have a better time here in qualifying. You can just see the the 2 Red Bull cars just pull out of the way of all 3 of the Apex Racing Team machines that are trying to get in and amongst them in those top couple of spots in qualifying. Kevin Ellis Jr. is coming towards the end of a lap right now. It was a 106.198 last time, which was his fastest lap. Is he able to improve again? Nope, he's going to dive with his teammates back on towards pit lane. And I think the next time they come out is probably going to be the last time that they'll be able to get off of pit lane and be able to set some laps.
I think they will get 3 laps to come out and set some quick lap times. Up on the jacks they go, fresh set of rubber, and now Red Bull Racing works their way through turn 1, Connery. Couple more minutes left here. They are the class of the field. 1/10 of a second clear from Isaac Price, and at a track like this, we've mentioned it. The deltas are so small, the lap time is so short, that 1/10 of a second feels like an eternity.
Oh, you can just see how much Carroll's trying to push the limits there. Through the old hairpin, he went out way into the dirt. Hopefully he didn't get himself an instant point there. Oh, he completely misses the apex for turn 7. So this is not looking like a good lap at all for Graham Carroll. So I think they'll kind of just wind this one down a little bit and then go again for another flyer. But timing's starting to run out at this point. 3 minutes, 30 seconds left to go in this one as the RBR cars head their way into the final chicane. And, well, it's Sebastian Job giving the tow to Graham Carroll at the moment. So Job seems like he's pretty comfortable despite being only about a quarter of a tenth of a second ahead of his teammate.
Well, you never know how the team rules work here, Connery. Maybe it was Graham gave the tow first last time around. Now it's Seb's turn. Teamwork always is the dream work, as they say. This team has always worked well together. They continue to do so, 1 and 2 at the top of the timing sheet.
Great stuff. Bleman able to improve position up into P12. We haven't given much attention down there to the minor positions in this one. Nastelshik actually getting himself a good time as well. Able to get up inside the top 10 there. P number 9 for him at the moment. There's a little duo here as well. Matthew Donington and Nastelshik. So Nastelshik benefiting from the tow of Donington. And that's one of those things. Oh, Nastelshik, big impact with the tyre barriers on the inside there, just going a little bit too wide out of the old hairpin there. But returning to my point, though, for those drivers that are sort of all on their lonesome in terms of teams out there, it's all about making friends in these sorts of qualifying sessions and partaking in a little bit of give and take in terms of giving people a tow and letting them tow you.
Yeah, very much so. And, there's a big swarm of cars, all about half a second off the pole position time. That's going to form a very angry mid-pack in today's race, Connery. So that will be an interesting battle. I think up on your screen, that's Bart Horston right now that we're watching in that 12 car. He's been one of these interesting faces that we've been seeing in this championship. A real-life racing driver trying to translate some of that over into the sim. Donington Park National, a fun challenge for him.
Yeah, it seems to be, and, well, Bart's been doing well in a couple of these races so far and really using that experience to his advantage. And now in towards the final chicane for the driver of number 12, and across the line he goes. That is going to be a 106.699, so not an improvement for Bart Horston. His fastest lap is a 106.550, but continuing to work at it. I think you'll only be able to get this next lap in. Remember, when time expires, that is it. You won't be able to complete your lap. And Sebastian Job and Graham Carroll have only just headed their way across the line, so it's going to be very close about whether they'll be able to get their final laps in or not. There they are, just on the start of the lap, heading through the first sector. So, well, the margins are quite tight, I should say, not just in the times between the drivers, but also whether or not these guys will get an extra lap.
You and I were looking at the exact same thing. I don't think these guys are going to get to complete their lap. Let's watch for Apex Racing Team, though, as they come across the start-finish line in just a few moments' time. They're about to set their final qualifying laps of this session.
So Kevin Ellis Jr. at the very back of the Apex Racing Team train. He heads his way across the line now, and is he able to improve? It is an improvement. It's an improvement up into third for Kevin Ellis Jr., but Job and Carroll look secure in their P1, P2. They're heading their way down the back straight for the final time in this qualifying session. Are they able to get the lap in? 10 seconds as they head their way through the final chicane. Carroll will get the faster lap of the two of them this time, and he does get across the line to set a time. But what time is it going to be? Maybe it wasn't valid. I'm not too sure. Ooh, that's a bit of a dramatic one. He wasn't able to improve for certain. He remained in P2, but it was always going to be so close there right at the very end of the qualifying session. Here's the starting grid then for race number 1. Sebastian Joe pole position. Graham Carroll just a quarter of a tenth of a second behind. That's so close. Kevin Ellis Jr. with a late session effort up into P3 with Isaac Price. An exemplary qualifying session for Isaac gets him up into P4. Damian Lynch, P5, Jack Sedgwick, P6 here to start race number 1. John Robertson, Jamie Fluke down in P7 and P8. Jamie Moon in P9, National Zik P10, and then you cycle those drivers to the second half of the field. Blair Mann, Bart Horston, Matthew Dorrington, Matt Emery there starts in P14. Craig Williams starts P15. Parkins, P16. Goodway, 17th. Drage in P18. Liam McNinch in P19, and Fraser Williamson will start last here today in race 1. He starts in 20th. So drivers now taking themselves to their grid spots. Just really quick here, Arjuna. This has the potential to actually be quite spicy at the front.
It does. You know what? Kevin Ellis Jr. starting right behind his championship rival. What's going to happen down into turn 1? How much of the team game does Graham Carroll want to play? Lots of storylines on offer here at Donington Park.
And we are eagerly awaiting for the race to get started. Of course, we're around about minimum 20 seconds away from getting the green light. But if everyone's ready and raring to go in their grid spots, then it can start earlier, and it will. Let's see what this round at Donington Park National Circuit holds here for the Porsche Esports Carrera Cup Great Britain. We are underway. There's a massive wreck. Massive wreck at the back. Someone's on their side sliding down the grid spots there. I can't quite tell who that is. I think that's the number 34 of Matt Emery, who's had a massive shunt at the start of this race. But everyone else, though, especially at the very front, has been able to get away well. The two Red Bull Racing Esports cars lead. Sebastian Job in front of Graham Carroll. Kevin Ellis Jr. in third. Isaac Price fourth.
So the big story there is Matt Emery does not take the start and effectively is a traffic block for the rest of the cars trying to come around. Big incident there, and a poor start for Simeon Lynch as well. But at the front of your field, Sebastian Job, Graham Carroll, and Kevin Ellis Jr. 1, 2, and 3.
Drama there in the mid-pack and back, and very well done for a lot of drivers to avoid that car that was incredibly slow, getting themselves off the starting grid. Maybe we can get a replay of that in just a couple of moments' time when everything has settled down just a little more. But coming towards the end of lap 1 then, Sebastian Job gets the lap led in his, in his cabinet, shall we say. But now Graham Carroll second place, Kevin Ellis Jr. in third. But Kevin, well, unlike Le Mans, he doesn't have his friends around to help him this time around, so this might work a little differently.
Oh, and it looks like Blair Mann has just had a big trip into the gravel trap on the outside of turn number 1. But out front, like you say, not so much of a friendly game at this point in time. Graham Carroll in this situation, Connery, I mentioned it at the start. What does he want to do in the team game? He's not fighting for the championship, and he sees his teammate's main championship rival in his mirrors. How does he play this situation, and what does he choose to do?
Well, look, Carroll is still mathematically in with a chance at the championship, but it requires his teammate doing awfully, and it requires Kevin Ellis Jr. doing awfully as well. So I think, in a way, Carroll's fate is kind of sealed, and he'll basically play rear gunner here for Sebastian Job and just make Kevin's life hell at the moment here. But I'm seeing no rash moves so far, so that they're playing everything pretty fair and pretty nice there at the front for now. But again, we are just in the opening couple of laps of what is a 25-minute race, and we've got another 25-minute race coming up, so it's still plenty of time for the drama to happen. Further back in this leading pack, though, you do have the cars of Jamie Fluke and John Robertson. Of course, there's other two Apex cars. They need to pass Cedric and Price, though, to be able to get anywhere near Kevin S. Jr. and give him a little bit more of a buffer.
Yeah, but let's take a look then at that replay on the start and what happened to Matt Emery. A couple of cars getting caught out. I think it's Rafael Drage, and then as well Ryan Parkins, the big hipper. You'll see the bright yellow car just does not jump off this line at all in very late reaction time, and not much those drivers behind could do.
Yeah, I'm very interested to get the onboard with Rafael Drage, because it's that typical situation when a car is either slow or stalled on the grid, where the first car to see it, that's right behind, able to avoid quite easily, but the second car approaching at speed doesn't see it until the very last minute because their view is blocked by the car in front of them. So that is unfortunate there for Rafael Drage, because he had absolutely no time to react to that.
Yeah, a big shame as well for Simeon Lynch, who really just got mobbed on the start there. Not in the same way as Matt Emery did, but here you'll see that onboard look, and no reaction time at all. And what can you really say if you're Rafael Drage?
Look to race 2, I think, is probably the thing that you'll say, because that's going to be pretty major damage on Rafael Drage's car right now. He's still circulating, though, and still on the leading lap. He's down in P18 at the moment, so picking up those points off of drivers that fell even further back and or retired from this race. But yeah, unfortunate start there. It's one of the more interesting starts I've ever seen further back, because you don't usually get cars very slow off the line or stalled in sim racing. So that one was more of a human error, though, I feel, because we did start a little bit earlier than what is normal, because everyone had gotten themselves to the grid ready.
Yeah, maybe just not really expecting that. Even I put in our little production chat here that we were about to go racing, as you were saying that we might go racing a bit early. But now battle on screen, battle for 9th. Bart Horston in 9th position, Miroslav Nastolchek right behind him, and Simeon Lynch, who I didn't mention with that very poor jump there on the early start, Connery, down in 12th position. He's lost 6 places since the race start.
Yeah, that's unfortunate there. A lot of positions lost there in that one. You see in this battle for P9, but Horston trying to hold on to those positions, but he's getting, well, looked on by Nastolchek. Nastolchek's really giving him a lot of pressure at the moment, basically pressing the nose of that Porsche into the rear bumper. So really not giving Horston a lot of room to breathe. But everything will be a little calmer in this battle heading their way through Coppice Corner. Now down the back straight. Simeon Lynch is also involved in this as well. The third car in line looks down the inside, goes late in the brakes, causes Nastolchek to go late on the brakes. He misses his apex on the inside there. Almost parks it on the second apex, and Simeon Lynch have to lift out. And the flashing of the lights there, well, proves my point.
A little bit frustrated there, and that's released Bart Horston very slightly. Horston has a little bit of damage to the front of his car. Not sure if there's... Sorry, go ahead.
Drage has spun again. I saw someone going backwards on my circuit map, and I was wondering who that was. Rafael Drage has spun it coming out of the chicane, and then tried to find the circuit. I think is probably the only way I can explain that. But still looking at this battle, though, Nastolchek basically making that Porsche very wide indeed, not allowing Simeon Lynch any way through. And I think Lynch is still frustrated about what happened there at the chicane. Look at this cutback, though, from Simeon Lynch. Nastolchek overcommitted to the corner, and now Lynch has gotten to the inside for Coppice, turn number 8. There's a little tap between them, but Lynch is through.
And it looks like the tires on Nastolchek's car just maybe slightly overheated. Here comes Craig Williams trying to take advantage of the situation as well. Some great racing here, Connery, further back in the pack.
Yeah, brilliant stuff indeed. And, well, it's not always at the very front that we get all the action here in this series. It's basically throughout. Nastolchek looking to come back at Lynch around the outside at Redgate, looking for the speed off the corner, looking for a line underneath, but it's not going to be available to him whatsoever. Craig Williams in that 12th spot. He's also on the outside looking into this particular battle We do have to remind everyone there are more than 16 cars in this field. There's about 20 cars, but unfortunately we have a little issue with our timing tower, so we'll just have to deal with that for now. But National Zik, there we go. Yeah, it gets it up. But National Zik continuing to apply the pressure in this one, and well, I think these guys are quite equally matched because Lynch hasn't been able to pull away whatsoever.
And there's a really tasty fight building up behind these guys as well. Fraser Williamson has just slotted himself past his former teammate Lewis Goodway, and Matthew Dorrington on the back of these guys chasing this group down as well. So 6 cars on the edge of the top 10 looking to scrap it out. Meanwhile, out front, still very much single file, Connery. Your championship leader is not making things too exciting for us right now.
I think give it time. And he's also a little too far back at this stage to be able to really rattle Carroll's cage. But, you know, given the opportunity later on, he's, well, certainly going to do that. It's a championship on the line for Kevin Ellis Jr. He leads, yes, but only by a single point over Sebastian Job. So he really needs every single point he can get at this stage. And Job having Carroll in between him and his championship rival is just going to help him when it comes to the point swing.
And Connery, when it comes to Kevin Ellison, the breakout year that the last couple of months have been for him, what do you think's been one of the big storylines and changes that he's been making? Because the Porsche Esports Super Cup has been going very well for him. This championship is going very well for him as well. And it's really been a year where a driver that last year really started to develop some very strong, consistent runs is converting them into championship fights.
Yeah, I think the consistency's been the main thing because, like you said, he's always shown those flashes of brilliance. He's always shown that he can be, on a good day, you know, one of the fastest drivers on any starting grid. But now this year, he's really just proven that time and time again. And I think he's just trying to work on not only being fast sometimes, but fast all the time. You know, it's that sort of consistency, and it gets him ahead of all the chaos that sometimes happens in the mid-pack in these races, and of course in the Porsche Carrera Esports Super Cup as well. As long as he's ahead of all that stuff going on, then he can focus on his own race and go chasing for those top positions. So I think mainly it's also the qualifying pace that's really helped him out as well, because he just starts ahead of all that.
And you're right, I think qualifying pace, speaking to some of the Apex Racing teams, something they've worked on a lot throughout the winter. Still some fun scraps back here. Matthew Dorrington now, Connery, on the back of Lewis Goodway. This is the battle for 14th and 15th. Couple of cars that have been through the wars this season.
Oh, look at that! Oh, no, the 74 spins right around like a record, and Lewis Goodway having a bit of an embarrassing moment. I think someone else got caught out in that as well. Yes, it was. Matthew Dorrington went out into the grass after a bit of contact there. So just a solo car incident for Lewis Goodway, but unfortunately it got a little bit of collateral damage as Dorrington tried to pick a lane and picked the wrong lane, shall we say. There's the overcommitment into the chicane and then tags Dorrington around. Nothing really Dorrington can do about that.
I think I have to take partial responsibility for this one. Wasn't I just talking about how they've been through the wars a little bit, Connery?
Yeah, exactly that. But that was kind of self-manufactured there for Lewis Goodway. He took the curb a little aggressively, shall we say, launching that car up onto 2 tires. Of course, you know, if we had Knock Hill, for example, in iRacing, then that's a common occurrence at that track. But we don't have any Knock Hill, and well, if we did have it, it would certainly be on the schedule. But yeah, the curb mashing here at Donington Park is probably not as recommended as it is there.
Yeah, a little bit too much curb there, but I mean, it shows you, Connery, when you use this national layout, that final corner becomes even more important to carry that momentum down that main straightaway. So you're seeing the cars really launching themselves over the curbs. That might not be the last time we see that happen.
Yeah, so I certainly agree with that. As you know, especially coming into the final couple of laps, you know, in those front pack battles, every single advantage you can get is going to be useful, and well, it comes with an associated risk as well with launching things up over those curbs. You got P7, P8 at the moment, John Roberts and Jamie Moon, who are relatively close in the standings there, as you helpfully mentioned that to me in the little chat, Arjuna. So, you know, it's not just those battles and the close battle at the very front that we can talk about in terms of championship. It's those little battles further down the order as well.
Yeah, there's some really fun storylines. Jamie Moon, John Robertson tied on points, 75 each coming into this race. Bart Horston, 1 more point in front of them in 7th. Blair Mann, 4 more points in front of them. So we talk about this championship fight being so close at the front of the field. It's just as tight in the mid-pack. And there are a lot of strong drivers, Connery, that want to use this as a platform to demonstrate that they can compete with the best in Great Britain.
Yeah, that's the great things about national championships, isn't it? It's a lot more open in terms of the participation, and you're getting a lot of experience by also driving with some of the fastest drivers in your country on the same piece of circuit as well. It's a great learning experience for these guys, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of these drivers actually try to get themselves qualified into next year's Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup. Certainly a possibility for these guys, and some, you know, might even be able to get inside the top 20 or whatever it's going to be able to actually qualify. So you might see some of these names in some more series a little bit later on, maybe in 2022.
And just an example of that, Connery, last year's support series for our, main event, the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup, our Sprint Challenge winner, the series winner, Moreno Sorica, is in the Super Cup this year. So this is a way for these talents to continue developing, to understand what you need to do to compete at the top level. But look at this right now. Kevin Ellis Jr. all over the back of Graham Carroll, applying a lot of pressure. We're coming into the final 10 minutes of the race here, Connery, and Kevin is making his move.
So Kevin has to time this pretty well, and he needs to get Graham disposed of quickly if he's going to have a shot at overtaking Job for the win. You see, deep breath there coming down the back straight into the chicane. He knows how much is on the line here with only 3 rounds to go, and of course including this one, 6 races to go as well. He gets a good run out of the final corner. He might be able to make a move towards the outside for Redgate, and he goes deep on the brakes there. My word, that wasn't a lot of room, but he's able to make it work. Does he have the speed on the outside? No, he can't get it done. Carroll holds on for now, and you can just see, as a result, the gap to the lead is extended.
Just very slightly, and this is that rear gunner action. This is what Carroll can do to help out his teammate in the championship fight. But of course, Connery, as we approach the final stages of this race, we must also start talking about the reverse grid that we'll have as well. Joe won't start at the front of heat number 2. That will be very interesting to see how he can work through the field without Carroll's help.
Carroll will still be around him though, and well, obviously if the reverse grid is based on the order as they run right now, then Carroll will technically be ahead of him, albeit on the same row. So how much that matters, I don't know. But coming through the final chicane then, 9.5 minutes left to go. We've seen the first signs of a battle here at the very front of the field, and Kevin Ellis Jr. leaning on the light flashy button to really put Carroll off his game.
Yeah, maybe just map that to your accelerator so that every time you're on the throttle trying to get past that driver, you can just irritate them as well. And you laugh, Connery, but it's not the first time I've heard that joke. Ooh, big crash as well. Bart Horston involved.
Yeah, Simeon Lynch also in this one. As my word, I'm just looking at my own replay of it right now. That was interesting, to say the least. We'll get to see the replay in just a couple of moments here. In fact, we'll transition to it right now, as Bart Horston initially looking to the outside, then cutting so late down to the inside, completely overdoes it, out onto the grass on the inside, and completely clears out Lynch. That is... yeah, that's not how you make a pass into Redgate, and I think the stewards will be pretty harsh on that as well.
Maybe we could get an onboard look with Fraser Williamson at some point in time, because he almost got taken out as well in that situation. I think Simeon Lynch, after that poor start to the race, is going to be fairly unhappy with how it's gone. In fact, I've just seen him put something in the iRacing session chat that's going to get him into a little bit of trouble, I think.
Yeah, and Lynch has to abandon the chicane and abandon the race as he takes the tow back to pit lane. So yeah, a bit of a punching bag, Simeon Lynch in this one, unfortunately. Bart Horston is still out there circling, of course, but with the massive damage to the front end of his 911 GT3 Cup Porsche. So yeah, unfortunate there, down in the sort of mid-pack situation. We've had a few retirements in this race. Of course, we had Lynch just then. We've had Matthew Donington and Matt Emery, who had that amazing shunt at the very start of the race before they even got to the very front of the grid. So yeah, interesting happenings in this race so far. We're still looking at the 25 and the 99 circulate their way through. This is Ryan Parkins and Blair Mann out there at the moment in their own little duo for P12, P13. But we're still waiting for any continued battles right at the very front of the field, aren't we?
Well, you say continued battle. How about any type of battle at this point in time? We saw that one move to the outside from Kevin, but I'm not even sure he was really trying to make the move stick. I think he was just trying to position his car, apply a bit of pressure, and see what Carroll would do. Carroll obliged, gave him the outside line. But you know this better than most, I think, Connery. Having lived quite close to the circuit, the outside line into turn number 1 is not the place that you want to be. More often than not, you'll get shoved off into the gravel trap.
Yeah, drivers do tend to squeeze you on the exit there. It's still a relatively high-speed corner. Of course, more of a medium-speed corner, but it's on the faster side of medium-speed corners. So drivers would love to track out onto that exit curb on the there. And if you have a car towards the outside, then that car is just going to get squeezed. So it's a very, very dangerous prospect to go late on the brakes to the outside and there. Of course, it does mean, though, that your only obvious overtaking opportunity is, slipstream down the back straight, try and get them done into the chicane. And even then, that requires a good run coming out of turn 8. So, yeah, it's very, very tricky to have any sort of opportunity at this circuit, which is why you've seen just a lot of single-file racing at the moment.
Single file at the front. Couple more scraps further back. I think 99 of Blair Mann has just got past Ryan Parkins. We saw that move coming out of the old hairpin just a lap ago. But for the most part, Connery, this championship has really delivered in those closing laps. Even when we last came to Donington Park, opening stages of the race may be a little bit slow, but Job and Ellis, they delivered in the closing stages. Let's see what's going to happen here. Kevin Ellis once again closes up on the rear, as look at this, almost 3 wide through the quarter.
Yeah, brilliant stuff, and Bart Hostin looking to the inside on Parkins there. Just not an opportunity into turn 7 McLean's, and now up the hill slightly into turn 8 of Coppice. Looking to get the traction down through this corner, and when you're on old tyres, that's really tough to do there because you're basically having to wheel it around the corner, and Bart Horston's got a decent run here on Ryan Parkins. Down into the chicane, completes the move on the brakes, and Blair Mann also sizing up for an opportunity there, just in case they came together.
Just managed to get on the anchors enough, but here comes that move back to the outside from Ryan Parkins. Can he make it stick? He's going to tuck back into line for now and not try to risk it around the outside. Wait, I'm just saying a few laps ago, Connery, it's a bit of a risky pass.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Blair Mann, what can he do about this then? He has lost a couple of spots compared to where he started. Started P11, now is in P14. He would like to get back up into at least P12 here. It's certainly possible for him in the final couple of laps. It just requires a couple of beautiful passes. But 4 minutes and still, well, a train of cars for the race lead. Sebastian Job has been very comfortable setting the pace at the front of this train. Carroll hasn't been challenging him. He probably doesn't want to because the championship is too far out of the picture at this point for Graham Carroll. Mathematically possible, yes. Feasible in any universe, probably not. So he's just playing the good teammates and keeping Kevin Ellis Jr. at bay.
Yeah, and I think, a couple of races left to go in this championship, Connery. You said it best. It's mathematically possible, but when you have an organization as big and professional like Red Bull Racing, they will focus their championship attentions on Sebastian Job out front right now. Kevin Ellis Jr., in a bit of a tough spot, I think, right now. His teammates further back in the pack, Jamie Fluke and John Robertson, 6th and 7th, doesn't have that helping hand. As he gets a bit wide onto the grass through this double left-hand section, he's not really looking like he's going to be able to get the move done with a couple of laps to go here.
Yeah, he hasn't given me all that much optimism. Of course, we saw that look to the outside of turn 1 just a couple of laps ago, but that's the only little sign that we've seen in this leading pack that things will start to change. So as long as Job and Carroll are consistent here at the very front and don't put a foot wrong, then they should be able to come across the line 1-2. But that's given an ideal set of circumstances for them. This series has tended to give us the set of circumstances where they go wheel to wheel on the final lap. So, yeah, take your pick.
And, you know, we've kind of not talked about some of the other guys in this leading pack as well, Connery. Look at Isaac Price, Jack Sedgwick, up and down season for them, but right now 4th and 5th in this race, looking to close out the season very, very nicely. And for Isaac Price, who is in a championship fight with Jamie Fluke, this is very important championship point here at Donington Park.
It really is. And also deeper in this pack, you have that battle for the reverse grid pole as well. So Jamie Fluke currently is the reverse grid pole position sitter. How many laps has he led during this season and still hasn't gotten a race win? I think we should pull up that statistic at some point because it feels like a lot. Hopefully in race 2, then he'll be able to try and convert that into a win. It might be one of his best opportunities to do so throughout this season. Of course, he got spun from the race lead last time out at Le Mans by Graham Carroll, and it was less the contact between the two of them that was the problem as far as the stewards were concerned. It was the fact that Carroll just kept it at full throttle through him instead of backing off and giving them time to recover the car after the tap.
Yeah, and it's great having, you know, stewards who really look at this championship and have a lot of experience in sim racing as well. It's not just, you know, Porsche coming over with all of their experience in the real world to run a sim racing competition. They've partnered with sim racing's best as well. But here we go, Connery. White flag is about to wave. And look at this, Kevin Ellis Jr. getting onto the back of Graham Carroll.
This is going to be a decent shot now. It's going to be 1 lap to go as they head their way across the start-finish line. Is there any opportunity to the chicane for Kevin? The answer is going to be no. Can he get the good run out of the chicane to be able to make a move happen into turn 1? He stalled a little bit, and you can see Carroll actually flashing the light to his teammate. Not exactly sure what that was about there. But 30 seconds left on the clock, so it's confirmed final lap here. So last chance for Kevin Ellis Jr. to get a little bit higher on that podium. And he'll certainly be hoping to do so, considering how close the points battle is for the championship lead between himself and Sebastian Job. We're on board then with Kevin Ellis Jr. for this final lap. You can just see him so focused behind the wheel of that Porsche 911 GT3 Cup car. And now out into the Bill sector, through turn 7 of McLean's, up in towards turn 8 of Coppice now. Carroll can't afford to put a foot wrong, neither can Job, otherwise the run will be given to Kevin Ellis Jr. Is Kevin going to be brave then, down into the chicane? It's either do or die, or stay in line. He looks to the inside, but I think he's a little too far back. So Sebastian Job is out of the final corner to win race 1 at Donington Park National Circuit in the Porsche Esports Carrera Cup Great Britain. Carroll comes second, Kevin Ellis Jr. P3, and Jamie Fluke will be your reverse grid pole position sitter. Drivers at the very back, though, they are still racing here. This 4-car train for P11. Bart Horston leads them through the final chicane, but there's going to be no changes in position that far back as they head their way across the line as a group. But an intriguing race there, Arjuna.
An intriguing race. You'll see Nastelchek mixed up in this pack. He actually fell victim, Connery, to those curbs in the final corner just 1 lap before. So we talked about there maybe being another victim there. Nastelchek, the unfortunate one there.
Yep, so we'll have a look at your unofficial race results from race 1. Of course, we have to remind everyone that the results are always reviewed after the race by the stewards, and time penalties will be applied if required. But Sebastian Job wins by 0.3 of a second over his teammate of Graham Carroll. A very simple affair for those two at the very front of the field. It does mean that Sebastian Job will take the championship lead coming into race 2. Kevin Ellis Jr. in P3, Isaac Price P4, Jack Sedgwick P5, Jamie Fluke P6, John Robertson P7, and of course, going back to Jamie Fluke, actually, he will be reverse grid pole position for race number 2. Jamie Moon in P8, Craig Williams P9, and Fraser Williamson in the 10th spot. And then cycling down to the bottom half of the field, Bart Horston with a very intriguing race, shall we say. Of course, with that big incident in towards turn 1, which is totally his doing, at least as far as I'm concerned. He finishes P11, but of course might get the attention of the stewards after the event is done today. Blairman P12, National Sec P13, Parkins P14, Goodway P15, William McNitch in P16, Raphael Drage P17, Simeon Lynch P18, Donington 19, and Emery, well, didn't get past the first lap. He's in 20th. So, those are the results from race number 1 here at Donington Park National Circuit. Of course, a bit of a calm affair compared to what we're used to seeing in this series, but race 2 is shaping up to be completely different, shall we say. It usually is, especially with the effect of the reverse grid. Jamie Fluke starts from the front spot, but this time, Arjuna, can he hold on to it?
Well, based on what we saw there in that first race of the weekend, Connery, you would assume that as long as he's got enough pace to hold on to that, to hold off, rather, the cars behind, he should be able to hold on to the lead. Fluke was able to stay with the leading cars. There's no reason why he can't hold them off as well. Are we in for a rather pedestrian truly train, as some of the Apex teammates in the session chat are calling it, or is this going to be a reverse grid race where Sebastian Job, Kevin Ellis Jr., knowing the championship is on the line, fight their way to the front of the field?
Yep, certainly a very big possibility, but it's only that. It's a possibility, and it's not a guarantee here, especially at this circuit where it's so tough to overtake. Of course, it's so different compared to the Grand Prix circuit, where you have an opportunity to get the pass done into the Melbourne hairpin, for example, down the inside, and the final corner becomes much better of an overtaking opportunity as well, with a bigger braking zone. But in the national circuit, it's a little bit tougher to really get things done here as far as improving your position during the race. We have about 7.5 minutes until we get the gridding procedure underway for race number 2 here in the Porsche Esports Carrera Cup Great Britain at Donington Park National. And, well, things just continue to develop, don't they? Like I said, Sebastian Job currently leads into this race. Of course, he got the points differential in the first race to make that happen. But, things could just easily switch back in the favor of Kevin Ellis Jr. And, well, Kevin, once he does get to the front, he'll then have the quote-unquote rear gunner, or rather, if Jamie Fluke wants to make his life difficult, maybe not, at the very front of the field. So maybe the fortunes will switch.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see for sure. We've got 7 minutes. Interesting to see how some of these drivers are approaching this warm-up session. Only one car out on track right now, Matthew Dorrington. Everyone else in the pit lane. And, Connery, if you're Matt Emery, you didn't really even get to drive in that first race. Why not take this, couple of minutes to warm yourself up, get ready once again for the second race? Because we saw in that first race, lots of incidents will happen, and you could find yourself in the top 10 with a good finish on your hands.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just looking at the discussion in the session chat between the drivers and also the race directors chiming in as well, reminding everyone that any penalties will be applied post-race instead of being able to do them in race. So there we go. Again, further discussions, but I won't delve into the details of what they're talking about now. But yeah, this race shaping up to be at least to have a little bit more action, and that's what usually happens when we get a reverse grid here. I gotta say though, Jack Sedgwick has done a good job to be able to get himself inside the top 5. And of course, he starts front row for race 2 as well. So he has done so before. I'm reminded of Snetterton, but he completely and utterly bottled it coming through the first couple of corners. So again, he can't be looking back on that and having that repeat on him.
Yeah, and Sedgwick, who is a very experienced competitor in this car, I'm just taking a look at the standings here on my left-hand side, but he's got experience at the World Championship level as well. I don't necessarily think, though, Connery, he enjoys driving this car so much, but he's always out there competing. It's great to see him at least somewhat enjoying the race today, starting on the front row for this race number 2. What can he do, and what can Isaac Price do as well? Isaac Price, who came 3rd in that race number 1, returning to the iRacing competitions this year, doing a very good job in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so as well. It's great to have him back. Of course, he's been able to compete in other platforms as well. He's always kept his racing skills up to par. But great to see him back on the iRacing side of things. And and you know, back on form perhaps, because of course he's always been a World Championship level competitor. Of course, you know, competed in the GT Endurance World Championship when that was a thing. So with Core Sim Racing, I believe, and you know, did very, very well. So he's you know, back into the swing of things. Of course, maybe it's taken him a couple more weeks trying to adjust with how things are going compared to when he was last competing a couple of years ago, because I think a lot of things have changed in iRacing over those past couple of years. But I think he's up to speed now, and that is a pretty scary prospect for some of these drivers, actually.
And I think, you know, he kind of took a step away after maybe not enjoying himself so much, and that's important. This is such a commitment for all of these drivers, Connor, that if you don't enjoy it, you really won't find yourself performing to the best of your ability. So he stepped away, found himself enjoying the racing again, and here we are. He found himself intrigued by this championship, qualified for it, and now look at him, doing very, very well and fighting it out with, you know, World Championship regulars every single week.
I don't know whether it's in his intention, but he certainly has the speed to be able to try and qualify for the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup, which of course is the World Championship level competition here on iRacing with a $200,000 prize pool, and you know, it's absolutely you know, fantastic to see that. And you know, this might be a stepping stone for him. Maybe this will just be, he's using a series to maybe get his sights set for maybe a qualifying effort into 2022. But of course, you know, he has a lot of other things going on around where he is at. So maybe not. I don't know. I haven't talked to him.
Well, the one thing that I'm pretty sure is, Connery, you know, his teammates return to the World Championship fold this year. I wouldn't be so surprised to see Isaac return as well.
Yeah, wouldn't be surprised at all. We got about just under 3 minutes left to go here in the little break that we have between the two races here. You can see that in the top left of your screen. We got at least one more driver out there on circuit doing their warm-up, and Liam McNitch is being able to get back out there. So I think most of these drivers are just taking this as a little bit of a break, get a snack, get a bottle of water, and make sure you're hydrated, and you know, your nutrition's on point coming into this next race. Sometimes you need that mental preparation as well. So that's why we're not seeing too much activity out there on circuit.
Yeah, it's this, you know, maybe an opportunity to just calm yourself down, focus in, maybe learn some lessons from that race number one as well, Connery, because especially when it comes to this top level here, there's so much that comes down to racecraft, the mental ability. How are they going to play this out?
Yeah, a lot of things to think about. In fact, I'm seeing one driver disconnect and reconnect to the session to make sure everything is absolutely fine. So you get that ample time to be able to work things out here in this series. Of course, it's a bit shorter of a break when it comes to the Tag Heuer Esports Super Cups. They have other interview commitments and things like that. But yeah, we're all set up for this race now, not too far away at this point. Of course, with the reverse grid, Jamie Fluke starts in pole position, Jack Cedric on the front row as well, Isaac Price and Kevin Ellis Jr. are the second row, and Graham Carroll and Sebastian Job will be the third row, P5, P6 for them. So we'll see how they are able to maybe work together to try and dispose of some of those drivers at the front. Of course, you know, it only takes one car to make a gap on the inside-outside, and then all of a sudden the freight train starts. So maybe the Red Bull guys will try and manufacture that sort of luck for themselves.
Yeah, and, you know, you still got 60 seconds to go here, Connery. I mean, it's a 10-minute warm-up window that for some of these drivers, they're maybe starting to get a bit impatient. But for the best of the best, for Kevin Ellis Jr., for Sebastian Job, for their teammates as well, they all know just how important this window of time is to reset themselves, get themselves into the right state of mind. Some of their teammates in the session chat having a little bit of fun. No fun for the you know, competitors right now. This is full focus on the 25 minutes that lie ahead.
Yeah, eye on the prize, especially if you're one of those top two drivers in the championship, because, you know, it is very much a prize that they're going for at the end of this one. Of course, not as much as it would be in the Super Cup, in the top, very, very, very top level of iRacing competition, but still a decent payday. As we have 10 seconds left remaining before we get to the starting procedure for race number 2 here at Donington Park National Circuit in the Porsche Esports Carrera Cup Great Britain. Time has indeed expired on the warm-up, so we'll get ourselves to the starting grid in just a couple of moments' time. So, Jamie Fluke then, thanks to finishing P6 in the first race. He'll get himself onto pole position for race number 2. Jack Cedric P2, Isaac Price, Kevin Ellis Jr., Graham Carroll, Sebastian Job. Those are your top 6 there, as we'll have to speed through this one quite quickly due to the limited amount of time. We've got John Robertson P7, Jamie Moon P8, Craig Williams P9, Fraser Williamson P10, Bart Horston and Blair Mann bring things down to P12, and then we'll speed through the rest of them. Nash, Jake Parkins, Goodway, Nick Nish, Draj and Lynch down to P18, and then the final 2 cars, Matthew Dorrington and Matt Emery. Let's hope Matt Emery can get off the line a little bit cleaner than he did in race number 1. So, race 2 here at Donington Park National Circuit in the Porsche Carrera Cup Great Britain. The Esports event gets itself underway, and there's a bit of a jump start from someone, I believe. I didn't quite spot who that was, but there was movement off the grid before the green flag, and now they storm their way down in towards turn number 1 for the first time in this event. Isaac Price to the inside of Jack Cedric, coming through turn number 1. Is he able to get things done? Not quite, as Jack Cedric has the speed on the outside line down the Craner curves for the first time, and Jack Cedric's been able to secure P2, and here comes, I believe it or not, Kevin Ellis Jr. Oh, he gets door-to-door contact through the old hairpin with Isaac Price, and now here comes Graham Carroll trying to pick up the positions. The Red Bull guys are all over the back of Kevin Ellis Jr. Carroll's through, and Ellis Jr. is hurting.
And Sebastian Job is having to defend from John Robertson, who's trying to help out Kevin Ellis Jr. and make life difficult for Sebastian Job. Contact made. Job is around. Job pointed in the wrong direction.
Drama. Huge in terms of the championship. Sebastian Job spun around. He gets cycled all the way to the very back of the grid here. And who was that tagged him round? It was John Robertson up in towards Coppice Corner. And this just... We'll have to see a replay of that to be able to judge, but right now, back towards the very front of the field, things still side by side between a couple of drivers here. Bart Horston's around there, Sebastian Job going around. This is indeed the replay after getting tagged around by John Robertson on the apex of Coppice Corner. And my words, that is not the ideal start there for Job.
That was the worst case scenario. I was watching on his onboard as he was closing in on Kevin Ellis Jr. He was getting attacked from behind, was feeling a bit worried, tried to look to the outside line, contact made. Look at Isaac Price off into the grass as well. This reverse grid race, Connery, is really, really crazy.
Yeah, crazy stuff indeed. As things still heating up there at the very front. It's kind of spread them out a little bit here. Jamie Fluke's trying to run for the hills. Away from Jack Cedric, and then you've got this close battle for P3 between Graham Carroll and Kevin Ellis Jr. And now this adds another little complexion to this battle, because Graham Carroll will know that Job has cycled all the way to the back of the grid. No way is he going to make life easy right now for Kevin Ellis Jr. Coming through Redgate then, Ellis Jr. around the outside, squeezes Graham on the apex a little bit, out onto the curb, gets a little loose, and falls back in line. But I don't think Ellis needs to be too aggressive with this one. He's already gaining a whole bunch of points over Job due to Job's issue early on. He doesn't need the extra handful of points. You definitely want it to make it more secure coming into the final 2 rounds of the season, but still, no risks from this point.
You know what, though, Connery? That car looks quick. That car's looking to the inside. Ooh. That car wants to get past. He doesn't need to do it, and surely his Apex Racing teammates are in his ear reminding him that the championship is on the line. But Kevin Ellis Jr. is looking very quick, and he sniffs another podium here.
Yep, he really does, and... yeah, you don't blame him, really, as, you know, he would have been rubbing his hands together seeing Job have a bit of a tangle with John Robertson. Of course, you know, it's hard to assign blame in that one. They both just front a little bit of contact through the apex of the corner, and, well, John Robertson basically had a car's width of space there on the inside. Of course, we do have Stewart's post-race review to come to assign blame for that one, but it's not going to give Job the points back, is it?
No, definitely not. And we'll get that another replay maybe from an aerial angle of that incident so we can take a better look at it. But right now, the main storyline then is Kevin Ellis Jr. still applying the pressure onto Graham Carroll. They've been falling off the tail of Jack Cedric and Jamie Fluke right now. You talked about Fluke running for the hills, and Jack Cedric keeping him very honest right now.
Yeah, Very honest indeed. And, well, Jamie Fluke, how many times has Jamie been in this position, especially in a race 2 after benefiting from the reverse grid? Led laps, maybe led the first half of the race, and then something unfortunate happens in the second half that puts him down through the field and he isn't able to take a race win. Hopefully I'm not damning him to the same fate in this one as he tries to pull the half a second gap over Jack Sedgwick, and, well, both of them have pulled a decent gap over Carroll.
Yeah, and you can see gap now up to 1.2 seconds. Ellis feels the pressure from John Robertson from behind, the World Championship competitor last year. Very, very aggressive. Isaac Price tries to take advantage of the situation as well. This really is developing, Connery, into a much more dynamic race than Heat number 1 was.
Yeah, it certainly seems to be the case here in this one, at least in the early stages. Of course, we still got 20 minutes to run here in this, so everything can be turned on its head once again. I'm having a look to see where Sebastian Job is, because he's still running. His race has not ended at that point, but he's way down through the field. He's in P15 right now. Here we go. We'll get the replay of the aerial view. Here's the contact into, well, not contact into McLean's, but contact into Coppice corner. John Robertson on the inside still has a slight overlap. He's still there, still there. Oh, there's just nothing in that, is it?
You know, it's a tough one, and I don't know if Seb's gonna really appreciate me for saying this. I think he was a bit aggressive there, trying to cut down to the apex of the corner. He might have been able to give a bit more space to Robertson and still hold on to the position. So, not exactly sure how that post-race review is gonna go in the steward's room. As I always say, Connery, I'm glad I'm up here in the booth and not down in race control.
Yeah, it's one of the more stressful jobs, isn't it? Being a race steward, because no matter what decision you make, someone's going to be unhappy. I think it's kind of one of those jobs, isn't it? So it requires a strong mind when it comes to people skills, I suppose. But here we go then. Still that train for P3. Graham Carroll, Kevin Ellis Jr., John Robertson, Isaac Price in that train. So it's very similar to the train that we saw in race 1. Of course, we have the difference here is that we have the leading pair of cars. Jamie Fluke and Jack Sedgwick continue to try and pull the gap. I'm just trying to see whether they're actually extending the gap or they're being closed in on. We'll get to see as they head their way across the line to see what the actual lap times is. So Jamie Fluke a 106.447 last time. Jack Sedgwick a 106.439. But the guys in the second pack, though, from P3 and back, they actually gained a tenth and a half of a second on your 2 race leaders. So the pack is catching them.
Pack is catching, but of course, if these guys start squabbling at all, Connery, that pack, you always start to lose time as they work their way through the old hairpin, though. Graham Carroll less than 1 second behind Jack Sedgwick right now. This 2-way fight for the race lead might develop into a 6-way fight for the race win.
It could possibly work out that way, that's for certain. My word, how this race and this entire series changes on the spot. Just that one bit of drama and, everything's blown wide open. This is a gift right now, though, for Kevin Ellis Jr. The amount of points he's gaining over Sebastian Job, and he wants to gain more by trying to get past Graham Carroll as well. He feels like he's being held up, I think, behind the Red Bull Racing Esports car. Of course, he wasn't able to get this pass done in race 1, but the benefit for him this time around is that Graham Carroll doesn't have as much of a draft from a car or cars ahead to be able to pull away down the straight. So now Kevin Ellis Jr. can give him a little bit of a tougher time.
And he's staying about 1 car length away at all times right now. He's sliding the rear end of the car through that final corner, really hanging it out, trying to carry as much momentum as possible. Gap between second and third is staying fairly constant, though, Connery. Hasn't really changed since the last time they worked their way through this section of the track. Does look as though Blair Mann, unfortunately, down to the end of the field.
Yeah, he is. So a couple of unfortunate drivers that had issues early on. Nostalgic did not take the start, I believe, so there was a problem with him. Lewis Goodway has retired from the race. Blair Mann, like I said, has had a horrible time. He's at the very back of the running cars. You got Matt Emery, who similarly hasn't had a good time in either of the 2 races here today. Matthew Donington also quite far back as well. So those are the final couple of positions there. And Well, we're having a look to the, I believe this is the mid-pack situation here. We got the 25 involved in this. That's Ryan Parkins. You got Sebastian Job trying to work his way through. So this is damage limitation now for Sebastian Job. He wants to gain as many points together, strap together as many as possible to be able to be close enough coming into the final 2 rounds of the championship. So that's the situation for Job. It's not the situation he wants to be in, but you have to deal with the card that you've been dealt, and you have to try and make the best of it. So he's got 1 position done over Ryan Parkins. Next on the list is Liam McNitch to try and get up into P12.
Yeah, and you know, these are just points. That's all that Job is trying to do right now. Recover as many championship points as he can do. Doesn't look like he'll really be able to advance much beyond 12th place with the gap to Simeon Lynch in 11th. Almost 5 seconds with, 15 minutes left to work. Job goes down the inside, gets the move done at the place where the drama all began on lap number 1. And now 15 minutes to ride around and get himself to the checkered flag.
So, couple more points in the pocket for Sebastian Job. Next car down the road will be Simeon Lynch, but he's quite far down the road, about 5 seconds down the road. So it's going to take quite a bit of effort to be able to close that gap in. But if there's one man that can do it, it would be Sebastian Job, especially in these cars. So we'll keep an eye on his progress through the field. By the way, the leading pair have basically, for all intents and purposes, being caught by the chasing pack. So now Carroll has the benefit of the double tow from those cars ahead of him. Will help him out in his battle between himself and Kevin Ellis Jr. And, well, there might be an option to try and go for P2 or even the race lead a little bit later on, depending on how this turns out. But Fluke has led from the front quite comfortably at the moment. Of course, Cedric has been there just to keep him honest, but Fluke needs to keep it calm and collected now to the end of this race.
No.
Whoa! Jack Cedric doing the opposite and taking the shortcut across the chicane.
A very quick reaction there, Connor. I had a heart in my mouth moment where I thought we were about to see a big incident unfold. He'll slot himself into 5th place. What a save there from Jack Cedric.
Yeah, that could have ended in tears for so many drivers there at the very front. If Jack had basically rejoined, more aggressively back to the racing line, that could have cleared out a good couple of cars, let me tell you that. But good job with the heads-up driving to keep out of the way of everyone and rejoin safely. Of course, he would have had a massive slowdown penalty thanks to that, but he'll be able to take the time to serve that. You don't have to serve it immediately. iRacing gives you a decent amount of time just to lift off a little bit and make sure the deltas are where they need to be and get that served. You don't have to slam on the brakes like I see many new people to iRacing do.
Well, look what's happened, and as a result of that, Connery, Carroll up to 2nd, Ellis up to 3rd. These championship points even more, swinging in Ellis's favor as Job down in 12th position tries to catch Simeon Lynch, still 4 seconds behind. Interesting situation here because now on the podium is Ellis Jr., but how aggressive does he want to get at this point, Connor? He's been tucked up behind Graham Carroll for the entirety of today's race so far. It's not been just for a lap or so, it's been the entire race. They've become very familiar with each other, and does he see an opportunity to make this move happen?
Yeah, that's going to be the thing. We've seen in race 1 that it's hard to get moves done, and look at this Bart Horston trying to get something done here down through the field. This is the battle between himself and Fraser Williamson, as Fraser Williamson keeps himself ahead into turn 7, but the run of speed through the corner goes to Horston again. Fraser to the inside to try and defend it to Coppice, but Horston try to go for the up and under. Horston's got a run of speed on the inside. They lean on each other a little bit coming through the corner, and they're absolutely equal in the straight line performance down in towards the final chicane. Late on the brakes then, too wide through such a tight chicane doesn't usually work out. Horston gets spat out towards the outside, and Craig Williams saying thank you very much. Those are 2 positions for me. Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm just imagining what Craig was doing on his Twitch stream right there, probably cackling in glee as he saw that happen. Williamson now into 9th, Williams up to 8th position. Incredible fighting here at Donington Park.
Yeah, absolutely. Craig Williams, great guy by the way. He's a really, really enjoyable stream as well. I do recommend. Oh, just get a little bit of a slide coming through the old hairpin there. It just doesn't help his case, and Fraser Williamson's going at a rate of knots at the moment, trying to catch right back up to the rear bumper and get up into that P8 that Williams resides in at the moment. Coming up to 10 minutes to go in this one, and, well, battles at the front, or potential battles at the front, and actual battles in the mid-pack. This is great to see.
It really is, you know, and I think it illustrates, Connery, that while there is some really, really good talent at the front of every field as well, this is where you see some really respectful hard racing from a lot of drivers who, in the case of Williams and Williamson, know each other very well and are going to give each other all the respect that they need.
By saying that 10 times as fast, Williams and Williamson. Yeah, it's it's great. That's why I've been calling them, calling Fraser Williamson Fraser, because I don't want to get myself tongue-tied in this particular battle. But yeah, it's been great to witness here between these two, and you know, there might be more before the end of this race, because Fraser's going very, very quickly indeed, and I love the purple metallic rims on that car. That is absolutely amazing. I'm disappointed that more cars don't actually paint their wheel rims.
You're going to have a debate there with various members of the iRacing paint community, where I've been told on a number of occasions the only acceptable colors for wheel rims are black, so Williamson, I like it. I'm not sure others do, though.
I love it. He gets my vote of approval for the wheel rims there. As, again, no moves available down into the chicane in this particular little pack. Meanwhile, at the very front, look at this move from Graham Carroll, looking to the inside on Jamie Fluke. That was by complete surprise. And can Fluke hold on? He's losing speed on the way in towards the Carrera curves. Yeah, Carroll might be able to get this one done, and he has. That was out of nowhere, my word.
Oh, what a move as well. We'll get that replay potentially and watch him sling it down the inside and make it stick. Watch this onboard now as Fluke tries to come back. But at this situation, Connery, does Jamie Fluke play the team game, a bit of multi, 49-98, maybe swap them around, get Kevin into second, and get those championship points on the board?
Yeah, absolutely. What a authoritative move there down the inside at turn one. It caught Fluke napping. That's the only explanation I can have for that, because that was just such a forceful and big dive down the inside that Fluke just wasn't expecting it. I wasn't expecting it either. I thought Carroll was a little bit too far back coming in towards turn one, but will Fluke repay the favor here? He might even go for his own optimistic dive down the inside to repay the debt, but he'll remain in line for now. So Carroll leads at the moment, but will it be an actual race win? Because it was stripped away from him at Le Mans due to an incident through Arnage, and that one was with Fluke as well.
Well, again, race control, all of these results are unofficial. This race is going to be interesting for them to review. It's also been fun for them to watch. Still curious, though, as Graham Carroll starts to pull away slightly from Jamie Fluke here. When is Kevin going to try and get past here? Yeah,
I mean, he's looking for the points and will like a little bit of help from his teammate in that department. But I know how hungry Fluke is for a race win, but he sort of messes up Coppice Corner there, gives the run to his teammate. So Kevin Ellis Jr. then up into P2, does a lot of work for his championship hopes, as that's another car put between himself and Sebastian Job. Oh, John Robertson's gone very wide through the chicane, and Isaac Price is now able to head his way through in the orange Porsche. There's not a lot of room, a bit of squeezing going on, and Isaac's going to go for the move on Cedric as well. Oh, he's missed his braking point and now goes wide coming through the corner. John Robertson's coming back at him now into the Carrera curves for the 17th time in this event. Wheel-to-wheel racing in this series is absolutely fantastic to see. And now through the old hairpin, Isaac Price loses speed on the outside, and John Robertson and Jamie Moon will take that position all day.
Some great, respectful and clean racing there. Not any contact made between any of the cars somehow in that sequence of events. A big lockup there from Isaac Price on the right front, able to slow it down without making contact with the cars in front of him. And now John Robertson, Jamie Roon really intensifying their battle for the championship as well.
We've also got the Sebastian Job down the inside of Fraser Williamson on his recovery drive. My word, they got a little close there on the exit of the corner, but I don't think Fraser's going to fight that one too much, considering the speed differential between the two cars. Meanwhile, back towards the front, this is the battle for P5. John Robertson and Jamie Moon going wheel to wheel into Redgate here. And typically the car on the outside hasn't been able to gain the speed, and the history will repeat itself in this instance. So Jamie Moon will file in behind John Robertson. But yeah, a lot more fighting in this second race. It's lovely.
And just to go back to what we saw a few moments ago, Sebastian Job, Connery, up into 9th. He's sniffing down the rear bumper now of Craig Williams. He might be able to get up into 8th position after that early race incident. What a fight back then from the World Championship driver. This is crucial in that championship hunt.
It is. Like I said, he's got to stop the hemorrhaging in terms of points. Of course, you know, the points will swing back in the favor of Ellis here in this championship, especially if they finish where they are. So Ellis will be able to retain the championship lead coming into the Silverstone International Circuit, which is our second to last round here in this series. And he would be, you know, hoping for a positive result coming towards the end of the season as well. These guys getting very close still as Sebastian Job tries to pull a gap over Fraser Williamson. What's the next car further down the road? That's Craig Williams, I believe. That's further down the road. So a couple of seconds further down the road as well. So still time left in this session for Job to be able to narrow that gap and be able to get past. Not a lot of time, but time nonetheless. And of course we have fighting elsewhere as well. But what I'm very interested in is what can Kevin Ellis Jr. do in this final sort of 5 minutes of the race now, because it's him 1v1 versus Graham Carroll and no one else affecting this apart from maybe Jamie Fluke on the very back. So yeah, this is where things can be won and lost here for Kevin Ellis Jr. He wants all the points possible to try and capitalize on Job's situation.
So we're going to cross the line this time around. If my math is correct, Connery, we'll have 4 complete laps after this. So including this lap that starts right now, Kevin Ellis Jr. has 4 opportunities to close up onto the back of the Red Bull machine in front and get the move done. He wasn't able to do it in our heat race number 1. We saw Carroll with a very opportunistic move down the inside into turn 1 when Jamie Fluke was struggling with tire temperatures. If Carroll can hold on to that car, keep it underneath him, Kevin has a lot of, not really a chance here, but he has one big chance, I think, and that will be on the second to last lap.
I think so too. On lap 20, ooh, slightly different lines coming into McLean's corner between the two drivers. Things getting closer and closer between these two now, and well, in race 1, Kevin Ellis Jr. was not able to get past Graham Carroll for P2. This time, the battle is for the race lead, and there's no draft to help out Carroll here, so he has to do it all on his own. Requires a big defensive effort then at the very end of this race. 2 minutes, 50 seconds left to go as they're heading their way up to the line. That's around about 3 laps, I believe, left in terms of that. So we have to remain patient for now, and Kevin Ellis Jr. is going to calculate and try and size up his move. Where is Graham Carroll weak? Where is he strong? Where can I stick the nose in?
Meanwhile, by the way, side by side, Sebastian Job and Craig Williams. This is that fight for that championship points as well, as Sebastian Job on that recovery drive, still side by side down into the hold hairpin. Craig Williams is not making this easy, Cottery.
No, he's not, and he'll have a nose to the inside for the old hairpin as well. Don't make contact, you two. Racing rooms given. And Sebastian Job with the run of speed off the corner will be able to get the pass done. But yeah, you're well within your rights to try and defend your position, no matter if it's one of the championship leaders coming through. You know, if you're an all-lapped car, you can still fight for your position. Meanwhile, Fraser Williamson and Bart Horson continuing to go door-to-door here through Coppice Corner. They've basically been door-to-door since the very start of the lap, and Bart Horson squeezes ahead, and remember, he is damaged, a little bit of damage to the front end of that car, and as what I can see right now, it's crumpled in a little. Fraser Williamson, alternate line coming through the chicane, gets the run of speed off the corner, and here he comes then down the pit straight, basically an entire lap side by side between these two for P number 10. Brilliant racing here at Donington Park National. But Horston locks up the brakes into turn 1, spins Fraser Williamson around. Horston again, trouble on the brakes, just like race 1, into turn 1. And Fraser Williamson's the victim this time around.
And unfortunately, that damage that you were just mentioning on the front of Horston's Cup car was caused by more contact into turn 1 with Simeon Lynch just a few laps ago. So that's 3 incidents down into turn 1 for Bart Horston. Not the easiest raced weekend, and he'll have to pick himself up for another event that starts in just a few hours' time. But look at this battle then for the race lead. 1 lap about to come. White flag's about to wave then, Connery. Graham Carroll versus Kevin Ellis Jr.
This is it. The start of the final lap then here in round 6 of the Donington Park National Circuit. We've got 2 previously championship contenders here looking to go wheel to wheel, but Carroll, this championship's basically done. He needs to keep Kevin Ellis Jr. behind him to help out his teammate of Sebastian Job, who's fallen way down the order. He's been able to recover quite well up into P8, but he would really love Ellis to finish no higher than 2nd to make the championship closer into the final 2 rounds of the season. You've been watching the Porsche Esports Carrera Cup Great Britain, and this final half a lap is going to be critical here for Kevin Ellis Jr. if he can get the points buffer heading into the final 2 rounds. Up and towards Coppice Corner then. Can he get the good exit required to get the slipstream and the pass down into the chicane? He wasn't able to in race 1. Is he able to in race 2? That's the question. I don't think he's close enough. I don't think he's able to do it. Graham Carroll will come across the line here to win in race 2. And let's hope it won't be stripped away from him like it was at Le Mans, but I don't think it will. Fantastic stuff from Carroll. Ellis in 2nd place. It's enough. I will say it is enough to be able to get a decent points haul over Sebastian Job, who comes across the line 7th place in the end. But this is a turning point now in terms of the championship, Arjuna. This is where the momentum shifts, and we'll get the lay of the land for the final 2 rounds.
A championship moment on lap 1 here in our main event race, and unfortunately for Sebastian Job, well, fortunately, actually, Isaac Price with big issues on the last lap of the race. Job sneaks his way up into 7th, Connery, but that gap to Ellis Jr. going to be very large heading into the final 2 race weekends of this season.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and well, we'll get to see how the order is maybe after the post-race review is done and see exactly where the points lie coming into those final 2 rounds. But here are the unofficial race results then for race number 2 at Donington Park National Circuit. Graham Carroll wins by 0.2 of a second over Kevin Ellis Jr. Jamie Fluke getting himself onto the podium here in race 2. Of course, led for the large part of the first half of the race. Jack Cedric, P4, John Robertson, P5, Jamie Moon, P6, and Sebastian Job able to recover up into P7 and try to reduce the amount of points swung in the favor of Ellis Jr. But Ellis Jr. will be having a much more healthy lead than 1 point coming into the next round, let me tell you that. Isaac Price in P8, you got Craig Williams P9 and Ryan Parkins P10 here today. And then you'll get to the second half of the field here. Simeon Lynch finishes in P11. Rafael Drage with a better time in race 2 finishes 12th. Liam McNish P13. Fraser Williamson 14th, who gave us a lot of fun out there today. But Horston with a lot of incidents out there today in P15. Matthew Dorrington P16. Matt Emery P17. Blair Mann P18. Lewis Goodway and Mishral Nashvik will round out the 20 cars that took the start here today. So there we go, yet more drama. Maybe not on the final lap like we're used to seeing in this series, but in race number 2 certainly. It all happened at the very start here today, with Sebastian Job getting tagged around by John Robertson and sending him all the way to the back. You know, it's those sorts of moments there, I don't know, where it's you can point to one moment during the season where that was the deciding factor. And I get the feeling we might have just seen it.
You know, in his World Championship crowning season for Sebastian Job, there were a couple of moments just like this for his main rival, Joshua Rogers. And, you know, we still have 2 race weekends left to go. It is not done just yet. Sebastian Job, Kevin Ellis Jr., we're duking it out all the way till the final lap in this championship at Brands Hatch. But it's clear, the man in the driver's seat is Kevin Ellis Jr., and he's had such an amazing year so far, Connery. How can he build on it? He's looking to become a national champion. What can he do then on the greatest stage of them all?
Of course, he hasn't had the best of time, though, in the Super Cup, has he? Really falling behind compared to the rest of his competitors in that series. But if he can at least get this national championship in the bag, then maybe he'll feel a little bit better. But even when he's won races recently, he hasn't really been visibly happy with his performances. And it must be like a tough mental battle at the moment to try and get back in the groove. Even though you win races, you're still not happy. That's got to be tough, and obviously this race 2 will certainly not help that fact after that bit of contact. So yeah, maybe a little bit of soul searching for Sebastian Job for sure.
But soul searching that, you know, again, it was an incident, Connery, where maybe there was a bit of, you could have been a bit more conservative if you're Sebastian Job, but it's also the kind of incident where you can't really look on it and blame yourself too much. These things happen in racing. We saw some great wheel-to-wheel battles. Sometimes it goes wrong, especially when there is no room for error when it comes to track limits. So yeah, stuff like this happens. Job will bounce back next time out. And heading into Silverstone and Brands Hatch, 2 tracks that we know Sebastian Job is very quick at, he will be looking to be the man on the show.
Yep, he will. And for Kevin Ellis Jr., it's keeping Sebastian Job in sight. If he finishes first, you finish second. That's the situation there for Kevin Ellis Jr. I think he has enough of a points buffer to do that in the final 4 races. But of course, we'll have to break the calculators out when we get the official results from the stewards after they've done all of their post-race review and such. But yeah, great stuff from, you know, even though that incident happened, still great stuff from Sebastian Job to be able to sort of pull himself up by his bootstraps and go from very last, basically dead last at the start of that, and after the incident, and to be able to work his way through back up into P7. It's definitely a champion's drive, but whether or not he'll be champion at the end of the season still yet remains to be seen.
Yeah, I'm always hesitant when I try to use those words because of what you just said. You can be the best driver that you can be every single race weekend of a season. There might just be someone that little bit better than you, or you might just have that little bit of bad luck that puts you out of contention. 2 race weekends left, lots of racing action left to go, and you know you can catch it all live on RaceSpotTV and the Porsche social media. I won't be on commentary, but I'll be watching on with great intrigue, Connery.
Yeah, we do wish Mr. Paul Smith well. I know he's been in our YouTube chat on the RaceSpotTV channel, just watching the race as things go on. Unfortunately, he kind of destroyed his voice in the Super Cup broadcast yesterday, so unfortunately he wasn't able to take part in the commentary here today. And but you know, it's we still had a absolutely fantastic race, I think, especially in that race number 2. We're waiting for a couple of the drivers perhaps to come in for their interview. We would really, really, really love to speak to Kevin Ellis Jr. if he's on his way, that's for sure. But it doesn't look like we'll get the opportunity. So I'm going to take the executive decision, and well, actually, I'll wait to see what my producer says. But yeah, Arjuna, it's you know, final 2 rounds are crucial now. Silverstone International Circuit, not a very common layout, is it?
Not very common, but you know, I have a feeling, Connor, the reasons why we haven't got any post-race interviews from either Red Bull Racing or the Apex Racing team is they are debriefing the race that just happened. 2 races left to go, championship on the line, and both outfits want to head out on top. This has been a big point of focus for them, Connery. They've been competing in the Super Cup alongside this, the Porsche Esports Carrera Cup Great Britain, and the championship comes all the way down to the wire.
It really does. We only have 2 rounds to go in the Porsche Esports Carrera Cup Great Britain Series. We have, of course, a race next week at Silverstone International to set the stage for the grand finale at the Brands Hatch Circuit on the 7th of March 2021. That's where things will be decided, and we'll get to see whether Sebastian Job or Kevin Ellis Jr. is crowned your champion at the very end of the season. I can't wait to get to that point. Of course, we have that event at Silverstone International before we get to Brand, but yeah, this series keeps on delivering, and with that, that's all that we're going to have time for here, unfortunately. But we've only got a very short wait before you see more Porsche Esports Carrera Cup Great Britain action. Just a week's time before we get that penultimate round at Silverstone International. My name has been Connery Medic. I've been joined by Arjuna Kankapati here on the broadcast. Paul Smith should be back for the next round of coverage. Thank you very much to everyone for watching this RaceSpotTV production for Porsche, and we'll see you guys same time, same place next week. Bye-bye.